and still on house, but this time a plaza, Wadata Plaza, that has now been deemed the Wadata House of Commotion. As we're seeing tear gas being fired, just a little smoke here and there. We're seeing security operatives exchanging blows, governors running away from tear gas. All of this has now become the new factionalized People's Democratic Party in Nigeria. We have national party chairmen calling on US President Donald Trump to come and intervene to save democracy in Nigeria, and not just for issues around Christian genocide. I mean, that can be deemed the height of emotion as we saw being displayed at the PDP headquarters yesterday. So here's a quick recap of how that commotion went and the eventual call by Turaki, the newly inaugurated chairman of PDP in Nigeria, of course, when he was calling on US President Trump to intervene to save the democracy in Nigeria. Let's take a look at that commotion and then what he had to say about democracy. Take a look.
Oh my God.
I want to call on President Trump. What is at stake is not just genocide against Nigerian Christians. He should come and save democracy in Nigeria. Democracy is under threat. I'm calling on all other developed nations, all advanced democracies, come and save Nigeria. Come and save democracy. Because I cannot understand how a serving minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria will be leading talks, armed talks, and then with the active connivance or support of the police to come and create mayhem here. I have said it, we are willing to lay down our lives to protect our office, to protect our democracy, to protect our mandate. So Nigerians, you are watching what is happening. International community, you are seeing the threat that Nigerian democracy is. Come and save us. Come and save us.
Even the camera person was coughing because of the amount of tear gas that had been used at the headquarters. Now, to assess the fallout of the conflicting meetings that were supposed to hold there by the two factions, one loyal to the Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde, and the other to the FCT Minister. Of course, two guests that will be analyzing this development, Sir Abuchi, Anueyiagu, Public Affairs Analyst, and Mr. Chukwuma, Ephraim, Okenwa, who is the Executive Director of Lead Network Africa. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. It was quite a sight, wasn't it? CEO, let's start with you. I mean, right now we're seeing state structures of PDP being dissolved. That happened at the convention. We're seeing at a NEC meeting, not convention, weakest faction expelling a member, people who expelled him. So I'm wondering, where's all this going? And what's your take on what we saw on screen? The total chaos, madness.
That further heightens the magnitude of uncertainty surrounding a once strong ruling party that ruled the country for 16 years, but now it's unable to provide leadership for itself. In fact, I describe the current internal struggles as seen in the PDP as typical of an autoimmune disease, where your immune system that is supposed to protect you is fighting against itself. And it's really cause for worries because all of this whole thing, it's more validating the palpable fear that Nigeria may truly be descending into a one-party state. and it calls for serious concern.
Right.
You
Now
know,
we're
because the
seeing them
indices
trying
are
to save
there.
it, right? They're
Yes.
trying to save opposition so that Nigeria doesn't turn into a one-party state. So Abuchi, what's your take?
It's quite unfortunate that we are passing through this kind of mess in Nigeria. And I would like to say it, and I say it very, very clearly. If this thing is allowed to continue, if it is allowed to continue, a situation where somebody in government uses the government platform to declare war on his political party, to fight against democracy in the name of whatever that he's doing, and the government that he is serving is allowing him to do so, feigning ignorance, pretending as if he doesn't know what is happening. Look, I tell you, there are ways things happen. And when it will consume everybody. Certainly, you may think that it will not affect you, you are in safe haven, and then you are there and using somebody proxy, using an agent to cause, to disrupt, to destroy, like the man Turaki said. You can imagine, to that extent, out of frustration, the man went ahead to call foreign powers to come and intervene in Nigeria. So, and the people might be looking at him and with despise and things like that, but it is a very serious matter. If care is not taken, it might consume the dimension this thing might take, might affect everybody. In the end, might consume everybody in the end. So that you don't feel that it will not affect you, that you are now keeping quiet over what somebody is doing. Is Wike larger than Nigeria? Is Wike larger than the federal government that he is serving? If not for federal government, where would Wike have derived that? Is he the only former governor?
What we see is a case of tit for tat. Yeah, expel me, I
Is
expel
it-
you. Now, go ahead,
is-
go ahead.
I'll go to ask this question because I think at this point we can stop pretending because even Governor Bala Muhammad of Abuchi, he's the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum. He came out this morning and said the problem in PDP is Wike's ego, his pride, and impunity.
Of course.
Nobody's pretending, oh, it's two people that are fighting and everybody is saying it's Wike. So let us now take from the angle of what the PDP themselves are saying. You mentioned, the PDP chairman saying foreign intervention, and that takes on from the point you made before, which is that the federal government can see what Wike is doing. It's almost as if there's a quiet fiat being given, like go ahead. There's a quiet acceptance, and because he has security forces, and we know in Nigeria, when you see thugs and security forces moving together, we know what that means. For those of us who are student union members, we know what it means when the police is escorting the thugs to meet you. The hand of Esau, the voice of Esau, with the hand of Jacob and the voice of Jacob now together, coming as one. So my question is this. Some people are saying there needs to be a middle ground, they need to find peace. Some people are saying scrap the PDP, move to the ADC, form a complete alliance. Some are saying that if the PDP dissolves, Nigerian democracy is dead because the APC structure will be too new. People always talk of but the PDP structure is still deep. Even in the southeast here, where governments are defecting every day,
Of course.
the PDP structure is deep. In the northeast, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, the PDP structure is deep. So the question now is, what next? What does the PDP do? Are they now going to fight Wike on Wike's terms? Everybody says that Wike has the court in his pocket, allegedly. What does the PDP do? See, let me start with you. What is the next step?
So yeah, what I saw yesterday is, some person, stakeholders in PDP, who is saying we can't take this any longer, and we want to take laws into our hands now. And by taking laws into our hands, we know that, before the convention, which I see as the backdrop for the recent crisis, you have like the Oyo State High Court backing up that convention. But then Two other counter judgment was gotten from federal high courts, right? Stopping that particular convention. And that tells you that when you see the court playing such kind of politics, then it leads to frustration. Because what is reasonably expected is that when there are crises between warring factions, the place to actually resolve these and get fairness and justice without descending into anarchy, like we saw yesterday, should be in the temple of justice. And when the court has refused to play the role, well, INEC also that should be independent, choose to maybe stay off for some reasons, despite maybe the PDP constitution. Then what you see is clearly what happened, and I tell you the simple truth. Going back there today again by the Turaki-led faction to sit back again, maybe make some pronouncement. Perhaps the next day also you could see the Wike faction. And that's exactly what Wike wants. That's what he needs. And they continue into unending, nowhereness, right? And it really calls for serious concerns because this certainly is not going to lead the party to anywhere. And I can tell you, if the NEC doesn't get it right, it doesn't matter where PDP currently holds sway in terms of depth. They will certainly lose it out because
so much happened yesterday. Enough things happened yesterday to make up a full year's bulletin. Eventually, we saw of course, the Turaki faction postponed the meeting, I think, to today. They moved it forward because of all of that. But we still saw reports that tear gas was fired into the chambers, that interviews were being granted, to disperse them. Eventually, security operatives ordered everybody out of the venue, and it was an utter scene of chaos, right? Let's look at those who defected from the PDP and move to the central APC, watching this chaos play out at Wadata Plaza. How do you think they reacted to that? Do you think that further justified them or vindicated them for leaving the party? The show of shame and everything that we saw on screen.
I mean, I already had Udoko over the news rejoicing, that Enugu State took the right decision. I mean, that in fact, he used the word that PDP is visibly dead, right? And that informed the need for them to move. But whatever be the case, I am really concerned because this wouldn't really help take our democracy anywhere. And I want to join my voice to Turaki to actually agree that democracy is under threat, right? In Nigeria, and it's really cause for serious worry to any political pundit and observer to know that the path that we are taking as a nation at the moment, it's really not healthy. And I won't, end, this particular thing I've said without observing the way our institution is also playing in the murky water of politics, like seeing officers, police officers, right, resisting themselves, squaring it out with themselves. I think it's really very unhealthy where we begin to have, that kind of, institutions descending into that. I don't really have any problem with politicians decide to fight themselves, but the police should not get involved. INEC should not get involved. The court should not get involved, right? I mean, politicians anywhere want to take power by all means, right? I mean, when you want to watch, even in some other developed climes, right? You watch maybe some campaigns, the way they, jeer it at themselves. It may not be in anywhere so much different with what we see here. But the thing is that the institutions are healthy and formidable to actually hold the politicians accountable.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up, just to Abuchi, because I know he has a lot to say concerning this.
Yeah, actually, I had a question for Abuchi.
Did this vindicate those who defected or not? Should they have stayed and joined the commotion that we saw at Wadata Plaza?
I wouldn't agree that it's a vindication of their defection, no? Because if you have a home and there is crisis inwardly, internal disagreement, internal rumblings, would it be enough reason for you to abdicate to run away from your responsibilities, from your house? What you ought to have done is to mobilize strength, mobilize forces to find peace and reconciliation instead of abandoning the boat. So what they did, to me, I would say that there is no justification to that. There is no party that doesn't have an internal crisis, even APC. But the fact is that it depends on human being. It depends on the person who is in charge. I can remember if this was in the time of Muhammadu Buhari, there wouldn't have been any interference, and he wouldn't have found any minister of Buhari. using Buhari's government platform to undermine his own, even if the person came from another party. Remember, Obasanjo, of all his strength and might, he had a former chairman of the then APP in his government, and he didn't weaken APP. He didn't use the man to weaken APP. And that's the beauty of politics, the beauty of the so-called democracy, and what I termed we are still in civilian regime because we are not practicing democracy yet. So it depends on the person who is in charge, who is in power. And whatever, like my people will say, Aku nwata gbara n'okenye pịarịa, that arrow or bow that the child, used in attacking somebody, it was prepared for him by an elder in the house. So whatever that is happening in PDP today has the imprimatur of the man at the helm of affairs in this country, and he cannot deny it.
All right.
We must tell ourselves the truth, because if what Wike is doing does not have his tacit support, Wike wouldn't have been doing that.
Let me ask this question. Every party's constitution, they have their exco's, they have their working committees, and then you have the advisory council, the conscience of the party, the advisors, the board of trustees. There's only one board of trustees. And in this case, Adolphus Wabara and co have taken a side. In fact, in total support of the election of the new chairman, the secretary McCarthy resigned, so that the secretary of the BOT and the chairman are not from the same state or the same area. And my question is, if the BOT is clearly telling you that this is because we saw, even remember when Abuchi was having intented issues, everything, it was the BOT showdown that stopped everything.
Of course.
What is Wike still fighting for? And what are our courts looking at when the board of trustees have taken a stand? And I want to hear from both of you.
Okay, Nnamdi, taking it from there, you remember there is what somebody might, it's a law, because since it has not been vacated, it has not been changed, it is a law, and it is an extant law. There was a judgment up to the Supreme Court level that says anything pertaining to parties' internal affairs.
Oh, yeah,
so
courts have no business.
They have no business. So why should the Federal High Court in Abuja, if that Federal High Court did not have the tacit support of the body language of the powers that be in Abuja, why and how could that court have made such pronouncement interfering when the Superior Court in Nigeria, the highest court in Nigeria, had given a ruling saying anything pertaining to internal affairs of any political party is outside the adjudication of the court. So why should court, despite that ruling, still went ahead, a lower court still went ahead to interfere?
One was to stop the convention, and the second one was from Sule Lamido, who said he was not given a fair chance to contest for the chairmanship. Those are the two people that filed two different suits. So, CEO, let me hear from you. The BOT has taken a stance. And it's so confusing, because I would have thought that once the BOT has taken a stance, that should give a clear indication of what is perceived to be the party.
Honestly, that's what it's supposed to be. But over time, we've seen the courts descend into matters that is beyond this jurisdiction. Like we saw, you remember the time of the new Naira note. I mean, the law empowers the CBN entirely with all the full powers to determine where we can change currency. About 7 governors who were not at peace with that went to the court, and court gave the judgment. So the court can almost decide everything. They decide who governs the states now, decide just virtually everything, just hijacking all of the institutions, so that at the end of the day, every one of us have to go back to court to say, you know what, the school we went to, we are not learned enough. Please interpret the constitution to us. And I think that burdens the courts, right, with much responsibilities that has certainly overwhelmed it, and has even led to like the confusion that we see in the judiciary And no wonder last year the report came out that judiciary in Nigeria remains the most corrupt institution. And a lot need to be done, because sometimes I keep wondering, is it really the politicians or the field or those of them in the either maybe in the religious organizations or maybe in judiciary who is more political now, right? Because even those of them we see scaling fence and contesting for control at the Wadata House seems to be lesser politician now. So we should be able to protect our institutions and must not allow that, the murky water of politics to actually stop what it should be. What is reasonably expected of the court, because even though the law in itself, it's not a solution, it's only a provision with which you can hold and then seek for solution. What is reasonably expected is, despite the court saying, okay, you know what, when the BOT takes a position, despite the law, right? I mean, it should be respected. Yes, there could be like internal wranglings. When they come to court, what is expected of the court is to, to uphold the position of the law and say, you know what, since the BOT has recognized this faction, that is what it stands.
Because it's your internal
Yeah, because it's an internal matter.
So what needs to happen next? Because now some people are saying make peace. Some people are saying Makinde, Wabara, McCarthy, all of them need to stand their ground. The question now is, those people who want to stand their ground are also letting us know, according to them, that Nelson Wike has total control of the judiciary. In fact, the rumor mill is that he's a quote-unquote godmother, Justice Mary Odili, and you have his wife again.
Yes.
We had him recently at the judges in Abuja yesterday, where judges were meeting for their conference. He's building houses for judges in Abuja. So the word on the streets, according to
and buying their conscience,
is that they are in his pocket.
Yeah.
So there is no way they can have peace.
Okay, what I want to say, two things. Number one, even if he's building for them, not with his money, I wonder how people can be learned in Nigeria. Just like sometimes you hear people, they say, he that pays the piper, they take the tune, and they are referring to government. Almost, if the executive arm, maybe the fund has to get to them first before transmitting it to judiciary or legislature. It's not their money, it's taxpayers' money. And you don't need to go back again to secondary school to study government and economics to know that if Tinubu is giving you money today, it's not his money, it's taxpayers' money. If Mba is giving his money, it's not the money from Pinnacle Lawyer, it is taxpayers' money.
But if
and we must be able to.
If they're giving you more than you deserve, or money that
is he adding any money from any of his conglomerates?
My question is this:
he's not.
If I'm saying that, in Nigeria, we don't treat the Commonwealth as Commonwealth, we treat it as national cake.
Now it should be, even if you treat it as national cake.
I give you if I give you a slice that is too big, even if it's not my money,
that is
even if it's not my money. But I'm feeling instead of me to give you enough to do what you need to do, I'm giving you for your left hand, right hand, two pockets.
Okay, let me even say something.
Your conscience?
Yeah, let me even say something. Even if he gives you from tiger share to lion share, it's still not his money. You understand what I'm saying? His own segments have also taken a whole community share. So people must first of all understand that. You understand that. I mean, if you are learned, you understand the law. You shouldn't allow a politician get to that point where you make some judgments that somebody in primary school will not, with conscience, would not even take. And that is the state that the judiciary in Nigeria has come. First. Second is that when you talk about peace processes, those involved must be ready to do what? To shift positions. But when people hold on to their positions, the only last resort will always be to go back to the judiciary. But if judiciary plays politics with judgment, then you can't land anywhere. In fact, they will even be instrumental to like judgment, counter judgments, and all of this will delay. Will 2027 election be postponed because PDP is not ready? Certainly not.
All right. Now, speaking of the 2027 elections and readiness, there are two factions now in the People's Democratic Party. I think the key question here is which of them is legitimate?
Which of them that is legitimate is because of the powers that the Constitution vests with INEC. INEC is like the recognizing body. It is only the faction that INEC recognizes becomes the authentic one. So when INEC fails to do their duty and decides to descend into the arena of being partisan, that is the problem. That is another institution that is corrupt, apart from the judiciary. So INEC's language determines who becomes what. And it reported that there was no INEC official at the PDP National Convention. When the whole world, the mind of the majority of Nigerians, because when you look at the mood of the nation last weekend, you will know that Nigerians wanted that convention to hold. Even from media reports, the media, they didn't take sides. They showed patriotism by supporting that convention to see if things could balance. A situation where government, you have one political party system in a country like Nigeria, a diverse society like Nigeria, is spells doom for Nigeria. PDP tolerated, when they were in power, they tolerated other political parties. In fact, it was during their regime that gave room for proliferation of political parties, even from within PDP, people left PDP to form APC. APC that is reigning today, people came from PDP to form APC, and they allowed that, PDP allowed that. So why shouldn't the present regime allow democracy to reign? So the fact remains that INEC decides which way to go based on the body language of, like my friend said, he who is paying the piper. So determines the tune. The people that are using public fund to fund the INEC, and INEC feels that it is now a personal fund, and that the allegiance is to individuals' personality and ego. That's the problem. But if INEC decides to do their job, irrespective of who is involved, who is concerned, and without fear of favor, without fear of losing that job, then if INEC decides to do things right, INEC should have recognized the convention that took place last Saturday in Ibadan.
So
and then,
if INEC did not recognize it, does that mean that that convention is null and void, and all the activities there don't count?
Certainly, yes, except if the court says otherwise, because in the nation, right, based on like, okay, resolution of issue, the court remains apex, right? Because even if the judiciary, even if the legislature today is to have problem with the executive, it will still end up in the judiciary. If a candidate find problem with the INEC and say INEC didn't treat me fine, they remove my name, who will still resolve that? Judiciary. And that is why if a nation gets it right in the judiciary, then everything can turn out well. Because let me tell you the simple truth. My dear, I have no problem if politicians decide to politic, fight even during the election process. But let it be that once you come to the judiciary, they will give it to who has it, right? They will just be fair enough to say, you know what? Yes, you did this and did this through a fraudulent process. It visibly seems as if to say you are the winner. But this is the winner. Next time, the person will look for another strategy. But the greatest strategy now is that rather than even going to like try to either compromise INEC or even like for the election through violence, you could just buy over the judiciary and let them do the work. They will just wait for anybody after all the process. Just maybe 5 people will sit down, speak grammar, off or without camera on their face, and then decide who is the winner.
The question of legitimacy, and I like what Abuchi and you've also said as well, INEC has to come out and say something about it, because right now, if we go to their website, we don't know how frequently they update their website, so we can't say for sure. I think the umpire has to come out and tell us who is legitimate and who is not. But these are all high-profile individuals. They both make up these two parties. We saw a whole 2 governors, Oyo State and Bauchi State, struggling with the gates, trying to get in and chaos, right? And then you saw security operatives there saying, no, we have to get clearance from who? So it's just like so much chaos, right? Judging by what you've seen on ground, and I'd like to come back to you, Sir Abuchi, what you've seen on ground, what you saw being displayed yesterday, which of these 2 factions do you think is more powerful? Because we have to look at the things that we see. Let's not try to be spirits.
Of course.
Which of these factions do you think is more powerful?
The one that seems more powerful in parentheses is the one that is having the backing of government apparatuses. And what are these government instruments of coercion? The one that is in charge of instrument of coercion, that is the security personnel. That is the one that seems to be more powerful because it's enjoying the backing, the body language of someone that has decided to take sides. I remember in the 80s, there was a commissioner of police in Enugu here called Bishop Eyitene. Bishop Eyitene was having issues with the then governor Jim Obodo of Anambra State. And Bishop Eyitene said that his authority was coming from Lagos. That was when Lagos was the headquarters of Nigeria. So he said it was the IGP, unless the IGP says that he was taking instructions from his boss, the IGP of police then. That even though the governor was the chief security officer of the state, that was on mere paper. But the issue, so these people, the two factions, the one that is enjoying the support, the background, the backing of the police or the security agencies, to me, whether legally, legitimately or not, is the one that is more powerful. So the one that is enjoying this thing might not be legitimate, but
yes,
provided that is enjoying that.
The question, Sir Abuchi, you've established that. The question is about power and control. Which of these factions? Because you're yet to answer me. You're saying one that has more. They both had security. They were both security men exchange blows. They were shot aside.
Yes, but there was one that has.
Which one? Which one? Which is that one?
The weekend has. If weekend's group did not have the upper hand, that meeting would have taken place yesterday. That meeting would have, we must tell ourselves the truth. The meeting, yes, these people came with their personal security, the governors, they came with their personal security. But from Abuja there was a deployment of police. There was a detachment of
but
police.
We must also establish that Turaki had met with the Commissioner of Police, Abuja, to tell them about this promotion before it happened. So he also had police operatives, not just personnel, from the state. And he also thanked them as well for providing security.
Yes.
CEO, over to you.
Yeah, of course, we even saw that their own police officers, like Baland, was able to make their way in.
They shoved,
they pushed
their way in.
Yes, they pushed their way in. And let me also say something which is very important. What we have is the Nigerian police force, not the federal police force. And as a matter of fact, what I just see is that oftentimes you have governors as weaklings, or weaklings as governors. The constitution is very clear. You are the chief security officer of your state. Two is that the police is governed by the police council. The police council is made up of the president, vice president, chairman, police service commission, the IGP, and the 36 governors. What is their role? Everything about administration and organization of the police force, the governors have a critical role in playing. But when last did this council meet? Who are you going to blame? So the governors themselves, and if the constitution also designates the apex police officer in your state as a commissioner, it means in Enugu, for instance, if you have 24 commissioners, the 25th commissioner is the commissioner for police and can be higher. You understand what I'm saying? So the fact that maybe the constitution makes provision, yes, that certain orders you have to ratify from that of the IGP. You as a governor, your own problem is not to interpret that. Hold on the one that favors you. The constitution says you are the what? The chief security officer. The constitution says you are to advise on how police should be administered. Stay on the one that favors you more. You know that when you look at Nigeria constitution, there are a lot of conflicting issues. Yeah. Is it not like in the last time the Melots were trying to interpret transmission and transfer of results? People begin to see those lacuna. And I think sometimes they leave those things deliberately. So to me, you know what I do and I understand about the law.
Let's replicate the question to you.
Yes.
You. Which of these factions is more powerful? Which of them is?
I mean, let me tell you the simple truth. Both factions are very powerful. And let me tell you what happens. It's just like what typically happens in a home. If a man and a woman is quarreling, you can't say anybody is powerful. Because in that case, the very fact that both has what we call nuisance potentials, the very fact that both of them, a house divided against itself cannot stand, And once they fail to agree and say, let's move together, either of the parties can stop any of the other from achieving a consensus. And without having a consensus entering 2027, PDP cannot even be anywhere.
But do you think Nation Wiki, you know, the word on the street is Nation Wiki does not even want PDP to be able to contest. The people that are saying he was putting there as a Trojan horse.
Yeah, I see him clearly because
his job is to destabilize the party.
Clearly he's playing the role critically well. And I can tell you the simple truth. This really like a kind of calls for the need for parties to entrench the principle of internal democracy. PDP has lacked it all the while. Just pick one big boss who funds the party, like Wike funded PDP severally. You know, Atiku was just junketing from one party to another. And when it was time maybe for him to, maybe in Nigerian political balance, get what rightfully belongs to him, which was the ticket, you know, Atiku took it from him. The guy got angry and said, you know, if you miss ball, don't miss the leg. Right. And he's been playing that key active role.
So look at that. Let's look at that video on screen. You see the FCT minister, Wike, you know, making his way through a gust of smoke into the PDP headquarters. He drives in and he just sits there in his vehicle looking at the chaos. People are clapping, cheering, songs, singing, tongues wagging, everybody just looking at him, and he seems to be protected by the windscreen of his vehicle. What do you think was going through his mind as he made his way in VIP status?
You know, like in diplomacy, right? I think what actually is applied is what typically plays out in a diplomatic arena, where, like, you know, you set up protocol in motion to give you timely feedbacks on the best time to arrive the stage, right? When all others has been, I mean, typical of what they put in will do, right? You know, when all others, the stage is already like, and then the big boss now arrives. And as others are, you know, trying to like gas for air under the tear gas, you just drive in your cool calm car and then enjoying the fresh air and watching, right? I mean, it's destabilizing. And I think this probably may be one of the reasons that, you know, made the other parties and say, you know what? I mean, the other warring faction, we just have to like shift these to the next day, right? I mean, because it's really very insulting. It's humiliating. Come to think about it, this is a minister serving with the ruling party, right? And then, well, someone may accuse the president. You may also absolve him. But I think PDP brought this on themselves. And if you ask me, PDP would have long suspended and expelled Wike. But guess what? He had the structure. He had the cuts. So the message to every political party in Nigeria would be, never get to a point where one person can call the shots, right?
And that's exactly what's happening with the one-party state bill. But now let's, away from the chaos, let's look at what this newly inaugurated committee is doing, right? People are starting to say that they admire Turaki because of his resilience, the way he speaks, his ambition to create peace and unity, saying he's going to go and bring together all the warring factions, and his tenacity. I mean, how they pushed, initially we thought it was Turaki's faction that was inside, then we realized it was Anyanwu that was actually seated there, and the weakest faction of course was inside, but they still pushed their way through. We saw the two governors there. There's this resilience and persistence being exuded by this new body, right? This new faction. What do you have to say, Sir Abuchi, about this? Do you think it would yield to a rebirth of the People's Democratic Party, or is it just a waste of time?
I don't think it's a waste of time, because they say nothing good comes so easy. So the young man is passing through the crucibles of temptation to test his resilience capacity, his endurance capacity. And I think he has that capacity to weather all these storms and then still stand firm. So he has said that he has come to bring about peace. And they should, after the smoke, by the time the smoke must have dispersed, then they will come back to the drawing board and do things. They are not new to this type of situation. At the end of the day, they will sit down and discuss. As for Wike stands expelled, and they cannot bring him back. They have made that declaration at a convention. So no matter what he tries to do, to intimidate, to bully himself around, no, it will not work. But once this man, depending on his resilience capacity, which I have seen, that he's not shaking, he's not somebody that you can intimidate by any way, then I see the glimmer of light coming into PDP. For them to have boldly decided to go to Wadata, despite Wike's threats and all that, I think it's a credit to them, because they knew that Wike, they even anticipated what happened yesterday, and still they moved on to take over Wadata
Now, in case of people expelling people who expelled them.
I think that as confusing as that sounds, it's probably one of the least confusing things about this country and about this political environment. Because we talked of people who have been expelled, expelling people who expelled them. But the story continues, because the expelled people now decided to expel those who expelled them from the building they had previously been expelled from, because the man who was expelled tried to expel the occupants by bringing a document to those who had expelled him, saying that they were expelled, but later were not expelled. And that's the story of what led to Wadata Plaza.
Okay. I mean, this is chaos. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining the show today. I mean, we'll continue to watch and see what the ripple effect of this will be. If there'll be other legal actions that will be in place, if I know or fresh expulsions, we'll find out. Thank you once again. We'll have to expel ourselves from this studio. The morning show has come to an end. Of course, stay tuned for other broadcasts coming your way here on Afia TV. And until we meet again, same time, same channel, tomorrow at 8 a.m., I remain Natalie Oku.
I'm Namdi Abaya. Try not to get expelled.